Okay, well, let's call the meeting to order. Good evening, everybody. Our task today is the final approval of the report that goes into the town annual town meeting booklet.
Literally just
Yesterday, we took a vote on the first section and the fourth section. And we went over the second and third sections and
these are basically like
made a number of suggestions,
recordings,
which I hope I have incorporated. Jen, you had a chance to read them? Did it seem to capture what we were saying?
Yes.
Great. When you you basically want to make sure that the
document, I think, reads a lot cleaner now with the changes that we're
running.
added.
So
And
in this case, we're running
made some sentences that were a bit awkward, made them a little bit
Microsoft
easier
Edge,
to understand,
and
I
that's
think,
how
and
we're
changing
getting this
around the
meeting.
order. So.
Sure that it's capturing.
Yeah, I hesitate to just take a vote because I think Scott
The whole
and
computer's audio output.
Joe's
Normally, I
said they
would
would both be able to make the meeting.
set it
so,
up. You can go into settings and do like
more minutes
specific
to
audio
check
output.
in. I
We're running with
think
this.
Still in Montana?
The only reason there is that computer's not turning on.
I'm here, John.
And I didn't have time to trouble.
Where are you?
Well, I'm having trouble with my camera, so I decided that I wouldn't try to fix it. I'd just get to the meeting.
I'm gonna miss your smiling face.
Well, I'll fix it for the next time. I mean, I don't want you to, like, you know, be disappointed or anything.
Yes, send me a snapshot. Or a photo, I guess is a better word.
Okay, well, if I get fancy, I could have, like, the fancy background behind me and, you know.
Yeah.
Super.
So we're waiting on Joe, or?
You're on mute.
John, your mic is off.
Set.
I'm going to leave it off for a minute. I'm going to give Joe a call and see
There
if
you
he, Rebecca just.
Excellent.
So did you get any information on the fire chief?
Yep.
Okay, all right. Good meeting then.
No.
Okay.
Oh, well, I didn't say a good result, but, you know, to get some information, yeah.
I told John when I logged on that I was still babbling.
From the story that was told, or?
Well, or from the situation that's there, however you want to call it.
Yeah. Well, at least you didn't have to, at least it wasn't a fire you had to put out.
Well, there probably would have been plenty of people to do it. if it was an actual fire.
What else?
Yeah.
Okay, Joe will be about 15 minutes late, so I would say we go ahead if everybody's in agreement on sections 2 and 3. I would entertain a motion to approve them.
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. Any additional comments on them? If not, then all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any nays or abstentions? Thank you. That's the principal thing that we have to do this evening. We can tell you, we had a meeting with Chris, and in a nutshell, it looks like what has happened is that there have been some changes made in the fire department that, because of the strong chief law that Granby adopted, can't really just be overturned by saying stop doing that. The key things are that we used to have a system where when paramedics went out on an ambulance call, the minimum requirement was for one fully fledged paramedic. They're now called 3 classes of EMTs: an EMT basic, an EMT intermediate, and an EMT paramedic. And it used to be that when they went out on an ambulance call, an EMT paramedic and an EMT basic, I believe, is all that was required for the ambulance call. And this fire chief has changed that. He wants 2 paramedics on each of the ambulance calls. So as a result, all of the paramedics that we have are in fact the high grade of, all the EMTs we have are in fact the high grade EMT paramedic. So that's one additional pressure on the costs.
So what's the difference? What's the difference in the pay grade between how much additional money we paying to upgrade the second person to paramedic?
I don't know, $10 an hour maybe?
Okay.
But there are other things. The way that the chief has also decided, he's hired 2 basically firefighters in training, paramedics in training. And there are 2 of them. They've not been given a regular shift. Instead, they're going to school now. The school costs, I think, about $4,800 a piece for the 2 paramedics. So they're being sent to school and being paid at their pay rate while they're going to school. This is so that they can qualify as a paramedic or as an EMT and as a firefighter. There are 2 different grades of firefighters, and I don't know which one. This probably enables to classify as the first one, but I don't know for certain, but it does enable them to be classified as a firefighter.
So that's 2 additional people?
2 additional people. 2 additional. Well, actually,
What are you comparing it to, Scott?
one additional, right? No.
So what am I comparing it to is how many people, how many employees did he have before this happened, and how many does he have now? Has he added 2 employees?
There was Micheline before. And
No, he
Micheline,
hasn't added any new, in theory, he hasn't added any new paramedics this year, with the exception of somebody to replace Micheline.
Okay.
And that's where I had a little bit of a problem, John, that he had 6 EMTs on staff at the end of last calendar year. So it's not a full year, even if they had just been hired in December, which I don't think occurred because that's one of the reasons the budget was short a year ago, was because he had hired, supposedly he'd hired 2 paramedics, even though the budget had only, no, he hired 3 paramedics, even though the budget only provided for 1 paramedic. So the main reason the budget was short last year was because he hired paramedics.
And because of the strong chief law, he's allowed to hire more people than he's budgeted for? Or he's just concerned about...
First part of the question, the answer is yes. The second part, no. You mind me breaking up your question?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
He can hire whoever he wants and set all the rules that he wants, but he's subject to financial constraints. He's subject to the budget.
Okay, all right.
Theoretically, apparently.
Yeah, theoretically.
And if he goes over the budget, then what happens?
Good question.
Okay,
We have a, whatever you want to call it, going on as we have right now and as we had a year ago.
okay.
One thing you didn't mention, John, was that Chris and the Board of Selectmen were not aware of the extent of the deficit. In other words, there had not been any real conversation between the fire chief and either of those 2 parties to say, hey, I got a problem going.
So did he go through the first town meeting to get what he wanted before this came up? Was that an intentional timing thing? This came up after the town meeting, right?
Yeah, I think so, a day or 2. Well, I won't.
Interesting
This came up
timing.
a day or 2 after the annual town meeting.
Okay, all right.
The other thing, major thing, is that if the fire department and the ambulance department are now staffed in the following way. There's one person who is at the fire department for 24 hours and then is off for 4 days, and then is on for 24 hours, then is off for 4 days. There are two people that have those shifts, a 24-hour shift. The other 4 of the 6 are on 4 days, which are 12-hour shifts, so 4 12-hour days, and then they get 4 days off. And then the chief works around to get it staffed at all times. But if somebody is out, and that could be for vacation, it could be for training, could be for sick days, any of the reasons why people are out, then what happens is the position is filled, and it's filled by the fire contract, it's filled by the other full-time people's there, I think in order of seniority. And they can come in and take a shift that is not otherwise covered, and they're paid overtime for it. And if you look at the overtime budget is just skyrocketed. And if
Aren't we using people outside the town before? You know, outside contractor, so to speak.
we have firefighters on call.
No, I thought we used a pool of outside the town EMTs in the past.
Yes,
So he's chosen to use in-house overtime versus that pool of people. Or maybe it gets more complicated than that, but
I think it's
it's
more
definitely more money. Pardon?
well, see, if you go back to before the controversy got going, which was, for last fiscal year, there was one paramedic on duty all the time, and an EMT would be called in when there was a need for someone else. When there was a call for ambulance. At some point, we engaged paramedics who were not certainly full-timers with the town. But how frequently that occurred, I don't know.
So basically, are there two EMTs on staff, two paramedics on staff all the time?
Yes,
As opposed to one before?
yes.
Wow.
With the exception, I think at some point there was a couple on one of the ships.
So he can do that knowing what the result's gonna be.
Well,
And
here's
then,
another,
and then as long as he doesn't go over the budget, nobody can say anything. Right? He's constrained by the dollars.
That's all.
But how can he expect to have anything else happen other than what happened? How did he expect not to go over? Or he didn't care, or something else?
so, just getting back to like the very beginning, what it sounds like is he's training someone to be a firefighter and a paramedic,
Yes,
so that you would have one person that was a firefighter and a paramedic, and then a paramedic.
no, his intent is to have all the paramedics be firefighters.
Okay, now, is there a
And
reasoning
let me
for
say,
that?
and certified firefighters.
Okay. So what's the logic behind having those people trained to do that? Is it so that he doesn't have to hire new people? Why is he doing that?
That's a good question.
And when our two trainees get out of school, are we then gonna have an 8-person full-time fire ambulance department?
No,
So we're training these people and they're not gonna be working for us? Are they gonna be on call or what?
no, they're our employees.
Yeah.
They're
so we
already
have-
working
You
now.
got somebody that was just working as a call firefighter in the police department, or in the ambulance, in the fire department, got certified as a paramedic. That person has not been certified as a firefighter. The requirement that has been is the paramedics that are full-time in the ambulance department are also 75% full-time in the fire department. So he's looking to have them, but he's not hiring more people. And I sort of think that Chris made that out to be a red herring, because it's not like he's hiring a lot more people.
Have we always had
While they were
8?
in school, we had to pay for them and still pay for a paramedic. That much is for sure.
Have we always had 8 full-time people?
No,
No,
I don't
we
recall.
don't have
it.
eight. We only have 6.
But, well, these 2 in training are on our payroll.
No, they're part of the 6.
are they going to school for paramedic or are they going to school for firefighter?
For firefighter, because they did not have they had not been they had been a call fireman before, but not a full-fledged firefighter.
So he's gonna have everybody at the highest grade possible. Everybody, the whole force, both paramedic and certified firefighter.
That's right.
6.
But there's gotta be a reason for that. If he's keeping a staff the way he is, And if he has it's just how I see it based on what is being done. If the reasoning that everybody has to be a firefighter and a paramedic,
Okay.
I guess it depends on how many people he has on staff, would either say,
Whether or not you're done, did you want to talk
this
about
is how many people we need to go to this place for the fire, or if
Thank you so much.
we have we have 3 people on in the fire department, 1 paramedic, but those firefighters are also paramedics, and you need 2 people to go to the ambulance, you're still not requiring an extra person for the ambulance to come in because they're already there. So it's understanding what he's doing. Is this gonna reduce our costs? Or, you know what I mean? It's that type of thing. I'm just trying to guess at why the necessity, I kinda understand. It's just the explanation as to why they're doing it.
It makes his job easier. He's got everybody qualified in everything, so it's not like hard to schedule.
And Sundays are
Right?
yes.
So I asked the question, what happens if you have a serious motor vehicle accident as you had earlier in the week?
Tuesdays up in the air, like there's.
And the ambulance had to respond and the fire truck has to respond. And the answer was,
For.
they tone out and try to get someone in, and the chief answers. Now, if you flip that coin over, and it's just a fire call, he's got two
Tuesdays.
firemen
Are
showing up
my client. and
to help fight the fire.
Who are also EMTs,
That's still.
Pardon?
still up in the
who
air.
are also paramedics.
Not necessarily. No. Wait a minute, when you, the 2 guys going to the fire are also paramedics, yes.
Correct, yes.
But if, in the instance where they don't go, where the chief goes with someone else, that person that comes in
Fridays and Sundays.
can be just a call fireman.
And then.
Of which we don't have any. We
No,
have
we do
every-
have them.
We have call firemen.
We got 6 total firefighter paramedics,
I'm gonna be.
plus the chief. So there's 7 employees in that department.
Yep.
So how can you find somebody less than that if everybody's at full grade?
We should start being a little more regular. Do you have anything else?
You understand my question?
Our own employees are all,
Oh, all right, you're welcome to just hang out.
are all paramedics.
If you want. Okay.
Yep. So how can you,
And all the paramedics at some
If you want to get
point,
paid for your whole.
and they should be by now,
Feel free.
certified as a firefighter also.
What treats do you like?
I have a question about something you said.
Anything without sugar.
Chris said distinctly that these 2 trainees, are not given a regular shift. So, does that mean that, how is the scheme carried out, having 2 people with 24-hour shifts and 4 people with,
My favorite office.
we're paying overtime to the other 4.
And have like a bunch of.
That's right.
bars and,
Yeah.
You know.
yeah, I mean, if they're a paramedic, but they're off at school,
Do you have anything?
now, I say that I suppose there's nothing stopping them from taking a shift.
Thing, I don't know.
They aren't assigned the shift, but they could take a
And
shift.
then like.
not for in school.
Pardon?
But it's still
No, no,
overtime.
no. But say the school is from 8 in the morning till 4 in the afternoon or something like that. There's nothing saying that they can't come in and work for 6 hours on a shift.
At overtime,
At overtime, yes.
yeah.
Yeah, so as soon as you send somebody to school, you're coming up with overtime, one way or the other. But as I said, John, they should be trained at this point in time so that the effect going forward should be minimal. Obviously, if somebody leaves and a new person replaces them, they go through the process again, but
Frazzled and messy.
it's not like it's a forever thing.
I have a question. How is going to school making it overtime if they pick up a shift?
You're
Because they're not paid while they go to school.
They're paid while they go to school, and we also pick up the schooling costs. They're on the payroll while they're going to school.
And if they pick up an additional shift, they're paid, they get overtime.
Afghans, like,
That's
oh.
crazy.
That's a good look.
I'll sign up for that.
Okay.
So was our,
If you don't mind my humor, FUBAR.
It's just,
was our new selectman there for that meeting?
Yeah, but it's not, the meeting still isn't posted. So they make progress, they got the annual meeting up.
No, I meant was our new selectman, Dave, at this meeting with the fire chief? Is he in the seat yet?
Yes,
It shouldn't be too bad.
Yes.
Yeah.
So now that I understand a little better about how the math works.
There are a couple more,
Something that.
there are a couple more issues that are changes. And
No, I get that. Those
one of them is this. Granby, as you know, is a small town, 6,000. If things are going to work out economically or financially for Granby, then they have to do things as a small town does them. We've been saying for years, to try to do things the way a big town does it, we don't have the money to do that. Something's got to give. Some department is going to get shortchanged. Years ago, in a small town, the fire chief was the person who drove the ambulance or was on the ambulance when they went on ambulance calls. And that just was the way the department operated. The fire chief was the ambulance driver or passenger. Fire chief was always a paramedic. That's changed. Now,
The previous chief said he wouldn't go out on a call, right?
yes, it changed. That was with the first strong fire chief.
Yeah.
This fire chief,
what was that again, John?
Touch my computer for.
I think Mitchell didn't go on calls either. He certainly was not.
You said something about the first strong chief. He wasn't the first strong chief.
That wasn't the first one.
No. Dave Seifert was a strong chief back. So at that point, you're,
Well, I didn't realize that it going back that long. But at any rate, the chiefs used to be the ambulance driver, the primary ambulance driver, or go on it, and only if something came up, they were needed to do something else, but they get something else. And that's changed. So that then adds a significant cost. That's basically an extra paramedic that we're hiring now that we didn't have to hire in the past. The other thing is a procedural change, and Joe, you might be interested in this. It used to be, if there was an auto accident, and then a 911 call came into the dispatch center. Procedure in town used to be that a police car would go out to the scene of the accident and decide whether paramedics were needed. And if so, then he would immediately call for paramedics to be sent on out. Apparently, that has been changed with the new directions of the fire chief, so that if there's a call come in for an ambulance, if the call comes in on a 911 call that there's been an auto accident, the ambulance automatically goes out. And of course, the police have to go out too. And then if there's any trouble with the fire, then the fire truck would be a third. But it used to be the police first, and they decide whether the ambulance is needed. Now the ambulance goes out whether it's needed or not, and whether anybody knows in the beginning whether it might be needed or not. And of course, a policeman goes out. So at any rate, this is something that the select board either want to take a closer look at this and monitor this, or else they just want to say to the town, okay, let's spend the extra $200,000 or $300,000. It's another reason why I think that the idea of having a group sit down and do the strategic plan for Granby and put things into perspective for all the different operations and say which ones we want to do and how much of it we want to do, which ones we don't want to do and how much of it we don't want to do. I think that has got to be done now. Otherwise we're in the situation where people are going to do what they want. There's very little recourse.
Within their budget, they can do what they want.
Even if they're not in the budget. Even if they're not in the budget, the town has to cover the expenses.
I know, but how can you, what is the select board gonna do to prevent this from happening again?
Don't know. And I think that's the question that's got to be asked.
John, you might mention, or I'll mention anyways, in talking about next year's budget and this year's budget, the fire chief made no effort to try to present a budget that truly reflected the cost that he was expecting.
Exactly, yeah.
And, you know, he gave Chris a 3% increase. That was it. That
Well,
was in the face of a 90 grand shortfall last year.
You'd rather just take the heat at the end instead of getting permission in advance.
You may not think there's any heat. And what he did last year sort of probably brazened him a little bit.
Yeah.
Do it again.
Wow. And they can't tell him how to do his, they can't tell him how to run his department because he's a strong chief. There are limitations on what they can direct him to do.
He is entitled to set the principles and regulations for the department.
And they can't lean on him and say, nope, we're waiting for the police to need an ambulance. Do that. And he could say no?
That's another question that I don't think.
I don't know if that's
we can give an answer to.
I don't know if that's been addressed.
But it ought to be.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is Dave listening?
Okay,
Well, I would
so,
say, if I could just interject, if in fact his behavior leads to an improved rating by insurance companies on your property insurance, because historically we've been rated the lowest because of the nature of our fire department, then maybe there is a trade-off if it saves the townspeople $500,000 in property taxes.
well, I seriously doubt if paramedics being firefighters changes your fire rating.
Just the fact you've got full-time firefighters is probably helps your rating. The fact that they also are paramedics is a different issue.
Mm-hmm.
Certified firefighters, right? I mean, if they're all
Certified may not be the right word, but
right, highest level training for a firefighter would seem to affect the rate. Would seem logical to affect the rate.
The other thing is that, you know, there's the ambulance fund, which for the last 30 years or so, I've been on the finance committee. The nice assumption about it was that it ought to be able to fund the ambulance department and accumulate some money to pay for periodic purchase of a new ambulance when it's needed. The fund is going to be depleted every year by the operations. So, you know, by thinking that there's going to be any money there to pay for an ambulance. You come to the end of a fiscal year, you'll be lucky to be able to buy 2 boxes of bandages. Nowhere near an ambulance out of the fund. So it's just another thing that I'm sure the town is not aware of at all.
So how did the select board leave it with him?
I haven't seen the meeting. I don't know if it's been posted up yet. Jen reported yesterday it had not been posted by the time our meeting happened
Yeah.
yesterday. And
I didn't have time to check today.
I checked at 6 o'clock and it hadn't been
It
posted.
wasn't.
What was Chris's spin on how we're gonna deal with this?
Let me give you what happens accounting wise. Chris has proposed in the town meeting warrant, whatever the number is, it's 79, but on the warrant, but when he was talking today, it was a little bit more than that, but be that as it may. If it isn't passed, there'll be a shortfall in the fund, and it will have to be solved. It will be solved. The Department of Revenue is gonna say, you gotta take care of it, guys, and it's taken care of by adding it to next year's tax rate, or as an expense in next year's budget. So you're about at the same point in time. It ends up that it makes no difference whether we approve it or disapprove it as to the effect on town finances. I had sort of hoped that if the accounting was such that we had to deal with the deficit at a future town meeting, that would be a little bit of leverage to get something accomplished. But it isn't. It's just automatically added as the equivalent of an appropriation for fiscal 26.
I see where you have to.
Fiscal 25.
I see where you have to pay it. I mean, the town is responsible to pay it. But, okay, so the fire chief doesn't answer to the select board and he doesn't answer to Chris Martin. He answers to the town. So who gives him his review that says, you're not doing a good job, buddy?
But isn't the town, because he's under contract, and the contract signed by the Board of Selectmen.
Right.
So they can hire him, but can they fire him?
No, but when the contract expires, they can choose not to renew it.
no, not. I think the only thing they can do is reduce the salary. When a contract is signed, there's undoubtedly.
No, I'm just saying the contract.
At the end of 3 years, I don't think they can fire them, but they can reduce, I think they can reduce.
You'd have to do something.
You mean they're forced to renew the contract instead of going out and finding somebody else? I mean, what kind of contract is that? That's a lifetime contract. That's a lifetime contract when you hire somebody. That's absurd.
I don't know exactly what the compensation requirements are, and there may be none. But I don't think you can just fire them. I could be wrong about
We're
that.
not, yeah, but when a contract, can I finish?
Go ahead,
Point
Jim.
being is the contract's for 3 years.
Contract
And you're saying that if the contract's for 3 years or 5 years or whatever it is, at the end of that contract period, we don't have the right not to renew it?
Well, Shelley, I think it depends upon what you mean by contract. A contract has a lot of things in it. It's got compensation in it, it may have fringe benefits, it may have other sort of things. I've never seen one of the contracts, but it certainly spells out the compensation. So when that contract, 3-year contract is ended, then the question becomes, is the person still an employee of the town? And second is the person get paid? My understanding, I could be wrong, but my understanding from what some things have been said is that you cannot fire him, but that you can
Not renew it.
You can basically set a very low salary.
So
I
he
mean, I
would,
don't know how much lower, but
I mean, I guess, but that doesn't make sense. I mean, the Housing Authority in Granby, which I'm chairman, we have contracts, 1 year up to 3 years. And at the end of that contract, we're not obligated to renew it.
Did the
We
town
have the
pass-
right to go out, we have the right to go out and find somebody else. That person can still compete for the job, but they would now have to re-interview.
I think the
And-
difference, Joe, is that the select board never passed the strong housing authority chief law.
Well,
No, it was the state never passed it.
no, it's a state agency, I guess that's the difference. Housing Authority is actually a state agency. We just have policy power, so, and hiring power and firing. So, okay. Well, I'm interested to delve into this topic a little bit more because what it sounds like is, my gosh, the town has no control. He can do whatever he wants to do. He can run up an extra $1 million, and we're going to be forced to pay it. So,
Pretty quiet after that comment.
I would like to hear what town council has to say on the whole issue,
Yeah.
because
There's a lot more to find out.
Chris said that he didn't think that the department had personal responsibility, but the selectmen would. Well, I suppose that's possible, but I'd like to have it as a legal opinion.
How could they be responsible if they can't do anything about it?
Exactly. So could it be that a strong chief has personal liability because the selectman can't do anything? And if he has some personal liability, or a lot of it as the case would be, then maybe some change can be brought about.
I like the sounds of that, Bob.
Yeah, but how do you get an opinion from town council when the selectmen have to be the ones to authorize it?
Well, Dave seems to want change. Here's a nice little hunk of change to start with.
so, okay, so since we have to pay for it, bottom line is when we have this town meeting within a town meeting to vote all that money, we should make our opinion known.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no question
And we
about
should
that.
advise the town that, hey, we have no control. If he decides to next year, if they decide that they need to spend an extra $400,000, we're going to have to come up with it. I guess that extends to the police department too then, right? Because they have a contract?
No, they're going to be a somewhat different issue because the police chief isn't under a strong chief's law. So the selectmen set the rules for the police department. When I say they set them, I mean obviously on the recommendation of the chief, and they may very well not disagree with any of them, even if they would like to, but the fact is they could change them.
And you already said that we can't ask for an opinion from the council. That has to come from the select board.
I think that's the way it goes. I don't think that a board or a committee within the town can go directly to the town council.
I don't know, maybe, can another elected official,
Pardon?
can another elected official, for example, suppose that the treasurer has a question, relating to his duties as treasurer, does he have the authority to ask the town council a question?
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know who does.
Well, you simply call and say, I have a question. He goes, no, you're not authorized.
Okay, so let's say that you go over budget by X amount. Could that be technically considered malfeasance? let's say if you perpetuate this every year now, you submit a budget, then instead we got to have a separate town meeting. Last year it was 90,000. This year, what is it, 200,000 or 214 or 215? Then the next year it's, 275 or 300. And I mean, if you look at that pattern, could that technically be considered, I guess this is for the lawyer too, could that be considered malfeasance?
There's got to be something in his contract for that kind of a situation. The town wouldn't sign an agreement with somebody that they didn't have some out for.
Not necessarily.
Yeah, don't bet on it.
Well, how ridiculous would that be?
Well, that's not the issue.
Oh, okay, all right.
I would agree with you, how ridiculous that would be, but
Okay. So I just think we should make a strong statement when we come to that meeting that, hey, as a finance committee, we're extremely unhappy about this. And here's our concern,
Well, how about a list of
And what I would do
questions?
for next year is, then we don't put money in our funds. And then we get to the point saying, hey, guys, we can't put any money in there because the fire department is now overspent their budget by X or Y. I mean, so you got to pay the piper in order to maybe have a chance at getting some control back under your budget. Because
Can we
like I said
present a-
earlier, I'll just finish with this last anecdote again. Like the time I was driving down New Ludlow Road and slowed down, and there was a call at a house, and there was a fire truck, an ambulance, and 2 police vehicles. So there's a cost for every vehicle that shows up.
that's probably normal.
Joe, it's not an extra cost though.
Why, that's factored in?
You're already driving around.
We don't have extra police who get called in just to drive a car to an accident. Policemen
Yeah, but I
doing
thought that if we had that, we had to pay something extra to the police department. And you're saying no?
No, they're the guys that are on duty, they respond, and they probably still do,
Okay. I mean, I don't have a problem with that if in fact that there's not any added cost to that, but I don't know.
How about this?
Our understanding is that the fire trucks do not go out automatically. So if the fire truck is there, there's a different reason for a fire truck being there.
Okay.
How about if we create a list of questions that we would like answered so that we can do our job and what we should do with the 200,000?
They already created that list.
So
Where
that
is
was the questions to try to understand the problem.
Yeah,
Right.
we're first trying to figure out what the problem was.
One of the little bit of a difficulty is that the effect on the town finances, whether this is approved or not approved, is nothing.
No, it's how we fix it going forward is what we're
That's
after.
right, it's how we fix it going forward, so.
Yeah. And what's he gonna do? He's gotta stand on the floor and he's gotta tell us how he's gonna change next year. So that he
doesn't have-
He doesn't have to do any of that.
we can
No.
ask him to, and he's
Yeah.
gonna stand there mute?
Yep.
If he
No,
wants
you can
to.
ask him all you want, but he's gonna stand, one of the things is, he's gonna defend it at town meeting, not the selectman, not the town administrator. And
Right, and
Chris
there's a
asked him
vocal
about-
group.
Chris asked him about next year's budget, and he said, that,
So we send a statement and we encourage the town to vote it down, even though we know we have to pay it. And we're sending the guy a message.
You're not going to get it voted down because there is a vocal group of people that no matter what, he's the strong chief. They believe in the strong chief. So they're always going to defend that strong chief regardless of his decisions.
Well, okay, but they won't have the backing of the finance committee.
They had our backing a year ago and still voted to go ahead and pay it.
Yep.
I mean, my concern is that the whole concept of municipal finance is based upon a budget. And you don't go over the budget. You do your best to live within it. You take actions to stay within it. If you have to have a hiring freeze or a expense freeze, you have it. And what we have here is just the opposite. I don't care, guys. I'm going to do what I want. And somehow you have to end up with getting leverage on the chief because he's
Okay,
the one.
So
He's
is
the
the
one
only leverage, you don't allow any new hires? Is it absolutely his power to hire as many people as he wants also? Don't we have any say over new hires as a town?
You gotta get in that contract. You gotta open that sucker up.
Okay. Okay. Well,
Can
I'm
we
done
do-
talking.
Can we,
Go ahead, John.
can we say that we cannot recommend the town vote in favor of this? But we want everybody to recognize that it makes absolutely no difference whatsoever as far as expenditures go, or whether the town votes yes or no. Because it's going to get paid. So voting yes or no is sort of based upon your principles of whether you don't care if people exceed budgets by large amounts of money, or whether you think it's okay. And
Let's-
then,
let's-
you know,
Let's find out if the town, how many townspeople are willing to send a message.
Well, that's what John just said, so I would agree with you, John. I think that's a good approach, you know. But also at some point, if budgets escalate like this at some point, aren't we gonna be forced to go for an override? Let's say it's some year all of a sudden we're up at 750,000, or do we always have the money hidden someplace so we never worry about it, we just never get to save?
Well, what would happen at town meeting, I think, would be that instead of that, you'd have to create a budget that slashed the money out of other departments' budgets. And, you know, there are only four big budgets. The schools, the police, the fire ambulance, and the highway. So you'd just have to cut those other big budgets and then at town
And
floor.
building maintenance.
Town
And
floor,
building maintenance.
if people want to add to the budgets, it would have to be on the basis of an override being passed.
Yep,
Right now, remember, Granby's approach for budgeting for the last umpteen years has been, we do not do the budget all at once. We do the very large chunk of the budget at the June meeting. And then in the spring, after free cash is certified, we usually have what is essentially another budget meeting. It's usually a meeting where equipment is bought, and that didn't happen this year. We did not have a specific Springtown meeting for the purpose of having money for capital equipment be attributed to fiscal year '24. Instead, the choice was made to just wait and do everything in the fiscal year '25 category. So, but in the future, it's possible that the town would want, or the town would have to just make an anticipation of what the free cash is going to be and allocate all that money in one meeting in June. And then that's a situation where once you reach the end of that presumed bucket of money to be delivered in the springtime, then you've got no choice except for voting out of stabilization funds or passing a override. And if it's an operational request, then we would hope the town would recognize that if they want to take it out of stabilization funds, they should realize that that is the same thing as saying, we're just cowards, we're going to kick this question of a tax increase down the line, because eventually stabilization fund money runs out. But a town can do that. A town can do that. And we know a town can do that because the town has done it.
You know, there's also, didn't mention this before, mentioned it this afternoon, one member of the Board of Selectmen is a liaison to the fire department. And the purpose of a liaison is to understand what's going on and take care of any problems or be the lead person on any problems that occur. Obviously, that didn't work.
Which
Well,
one?
who is the liaison? Do we know who the
Yeah.
liaison is?
Yeah, the one that's no longer a selectman.
Oh,
Good job.
But on the other hand, if the chief doesn't want to converse with him,
yeah.
The contract can't be all one way. Cannot be. Can't be all in his favor.
It's when you write the contract.
Listen, I think there's probably no point in us talking anymore about the contract, since we don't know anything about it, and we may or may not be able to find out. It's sort of one of those questions that we have to just either put off until we get into the year and talk to select board about it, or work through a different kind of channel. But it's nothing we're going to get settled by the town meeting. I know that.
I don't know, John. I'm not so sure of that. If we could come up with the fact that the chief has acted improperly, we can bring that to the attention of the town meeting as part of our recommendation. If we don't know, we can't say the chief did wrong. We can say he showed poor judgment, I guess.
Somebody's got to be able to look at the contract and say whether that qualifies or not.
Yeah,
But it's not us.
But somebody needs to help us here.
So, anyway, okay.
Chris,
Well, let's
Chris,
just make a strong objection, whatever our language is about our long-term concerns, because when somebody overspends their budget, the state says the town is liable regardless.
it's up to the town if they have any recourse otherwise. It's not up to the state at that point in time.
Yeah.
Just think what would happen, as they told us to Chris, what would happen if the school department decided that they wanted to overspend their budget, their salary budget by 20%? That's a good sized number.
All the departments could do it,
That's right.
technically. Every department could do it, and we'd have to pay the piper. So maybe that's an argument, John, like you said, for maybe a different form of government in town. So you can control a budget, because we're going to have no tax base increase. I mean, I went to the state, I know it's not a big number, but we lost, our population decreases. We haven't increased our population, regardless of whatever building. I think last year, it's not huge, but the fact that the trend is downward, I think it was 74 or 75 people below what the old number is. So we don't really have a lot of growth going on, and we certainly don't have an infrastructure for any kind of commercial tax base. So it all falls on property taxes, and people don't want overrides. So what are you going to do?
I think, first of all, on the theoretical question, it's unlikely all the departments would overspend their salary budget by 20% because the bulk of the departments report to either Chris or to Chris through the select board, or the select board through Chris, one way or the other. So if they tried to do that, something would be said. And there is recourse of, with town employees, of making sure some things don't happen. You can simply fire people. So it wouldn't happen there, but it's a question, it's a theoretical question for, elected officials. I don't know what would happen if an elected official who currently has no employees working for him or her decided that they just wanted to go out and hire an employee. I don't know what happens under a town if that occurs. Because in some ways it seems like the same question. The official would be massively overspending his or her budget. But does the official in fact have the authority to make a hire without it being approved by any other sort of organization in town? I just don't know the answer to that, but I don't know if the treasurer could go out and hire somebody to work for him. I don't know if it's possible without the approval of the personnel board or somebody.
So is the fire chief appointed or hired? Because it would seem to me that based on what that is, if you're a hire, then
Joe, I think the key is that the fire chief, as well as a number of other employees in town, have contracts. And so whether they're employees or whether they're appointed really probably doesn't make a lot of difference. I think the difference is whether somebody falls under a different set of rules and regulations, such as a strong fire chief. But we have employees who have contracts, and we have employees who don't have contracts.
And there's nothing that says that the fire chief has to have a contract. He just happens to have them
But
because
whether you have a contract or not, you're an employee. So doesn't that imply that the town has some power? I mean, why would the state, set the government up and then say, oh, well, you don't have any, once you hire somebody, they're in charge. I mean, that doesn't make sense to me. So I'm sure there's got to be some kind of mechanism here that
he
exists.
said that sense was involved.
Well, if this is the
I'm
case,
saying the sense of the state, because the
Well, yeah,
state
okay, but-
is the one that empowers the municipalities to do what they do,
A fire chief has
or
to
the
be appointed
Commonwealth,
by-
I should say.
Fire chief has to be appointed by the Board of Selectmen. That automatically makes him an employee. The
Right.
strong chief's law, I believe, is what keeps him in power forever and a day. If not by law, at least in practice. Now, don't ask me what happens if you get malfeasance in there.
what a perfect example for our comments this year.
Yeah.
Okay. So do we have to vote anything on this, John?
We have to, we're required to make an official comment on items that require or purport to require expenditure. So, yes, we do.
But right now, we don't have to do it right now, do we?
We've got to do it before the meeting,
Which is,
June 10th.
can't we find out more about what the select board or Chris are gonna do about this?
They aren't gonna do anything.
That's right. They already put out, they already put everything in motion in writing to have the town meeting within the town meeting so we can vote this money, so it is what it is because it's already been spent.
And nobody's gonna call him to task publicly.
We are.
No, we're not.
We're
We don't have
not?
that- No, we don't have the authority.
Okay.
John, would you be willing to talk to town council to see if he can give us on a quick basis some guidance as to how to deal with it?
Yeah, I'll ask Chris if we can talk to him.
No, I didn't say that.
Well,
Because I don't think Chris's hands are completely clean. I mean, he knows an awful lot about what goes on, except when it comes time for this, he doesn't know anything.
I mean, he's the accountant, he couldn't have seen this coming?
I think the magnitude of it got him.
But I mean, he sees month to month what the budget is, right? Compared to actual?
So does the department head.
Okay, well, we already know he's not watching.
He doesn't spend his time doing the department head's job. So the answer is he, and I suppose he's wearing both hats, so his opinion is for both positions. He doesn't think it's his job to do that, so he doesn't do it.
It's nobody's job. I love that one.
Well, it's the department head's job, and that's true.
Well, it is. But all you have to do is say, hey, I'm behind on my accounting. I'm behind on doing all my paperwork. Even though you know what the heck's going on. So then you submit your paperwork at the 11th hour. Oops. Well, I'm off by $200,000, guys.
He didn't say he was off by 200,000.
No, we overspent the budget by 200,000.
Chris is the one that determined the budget is short 200,000, not the fire chief.
Doesn't seem like he's.
Well, then if Chris determined that, then it needs to be his responsibility because the fire chief didn't know what he was spending. I mean, that's malfeasance.
Yeah, you got
You're running the department with the budget.
No, absolutely no question. But how do you do something about it? That's the issue. I don't think anybody who's going to town
You go to
meeting will think that the fire
the only
chief
way
acted
that you do
appropriately.
anything is you file a complaint with the Attorney General of the state of Massachusetts. That's how you do this stuff.
Wouldn't it be better to find out from council if we have even a legitimate gripe
Yeah,
based on his contract?
Yep.
Well, let's just press to get that answered. Is he within his rights to do it and there's nothing we can do about it? Okay, that'd be one thing. But can we do something about it? Can we, the town?
I just happen to think that somebody has to have some personal responsibility for the action.
I'm sure somebody does, but everybody passes the buck.
I mean,
So nobody's responsible.
if it isn't the chief, it's either the Board of Selectmen or Chris.
Right.
So let's find out.
And the selectmen are saying, okay, explain this at town meeting. Explain it? What? Oh, I hired people and because of the overtime, it's the way it's written in the contract that the selectmen signed with the union.
So you blame it on the union, right? Okay.
Well, he blames it indirectly on the selectmen, whatever the case is.
Okay.
So you're gonna try to pursue that question, John?
Yeah, I want to make it clear that at this point, we have no way to judge whether anything wrong has been done. What we know is that a budget has been overspent by a couple $100,000, and historically, that is an outrageous figure for the fire and ambulance department. I mean, look, we've got the last 5 years, they've overspent each of the last 5 years, but this is just a different league. But that's all we know. And the rest of it, we need to find out some information about. We are not happy that this is something which is allowed under the laws of Granby, and think that the town is not being served well by this particular kind of circumstance.
If we're responsible for the budget, and then people can overspend the budget, and we can do nothing about it?
That's what we want to find out.
Okay.
That's what we want to know.
Probably we as the finance committee can't do anything about it.
You know, you gotta remember, the finance committee has absolutely no authority and no responsibility.
We're advisory, right? That's it.
We have one duty, but other than, and that is just offer advice, opinion. We have no authority and no responsibility for any activities in town. We have no authority to monitor them. We can, I mean, we can see the monthly budgets, but it's never really been necessary in the past. Because again, we would have no authority to do anything.
Let me ask this.
If we call to question, if we see it, and we discuss it, and if the town listens to what we're talking about, it's up to the town to make a choice on what's gonna happen. But they have to be aware of what's going on. And if they're not aware, they can't make a choice. So I don't know how often budgets are shared within the departments, how often each department looks at their own budget to stay within what they recommended. I don't know what their process is, but I think as a community member, I think all of us should start paying attention to how things, and this goes to the whole strategic plan of what is the future gonna look like if nobody's paying attention. And
Okay,
that's part of the problem.
I would just like to, I'm not sure, okay. So I'm not sure if this fits in, but remember Chris had fired the previous fire chief, and I'm not sure why it was determined that it was illegal, so we had to pay a settlement. But to me, that sort of, maybe that goes to our whole point here, that once you have a contract, you really have no power.
I'm not sure all the things you said that were.
But I don't know the
Were
facts.
facts, yeah.
I don't know the facts. I'm just saying
We
that
had a
incident
settlement-
happened.
We had a settlement with him, but I don't think Chris fired him.
Oh,
I think they just made his life miserable. So if they made his life miserable, he decided he wanted to quit, but as part of his quitting, he had a contract, and maybe he had some recourse to get a buyout.
I see. So that
But I don't
becomes
think-
expensive.
I don't think he was fired, but I'm not, I'm
Okay.
not 100% sure, but thinking back to that time, it was sort of up in the air what was gonna happen. You remember we took the
For quite a
budget-
while.
Took the budget out of, I don't know what, I guess we cut the budget, the selectmen cut the budget in the ambulance, cut the ambulance budget for the head of the thing. And that in effect meant that there wasn't as much, he wasn't gonna get as much money.
So there is a recourse.
I wouldn't call that a recourse.
Well, I mean, the select board and the town administrator or whoever did something because they didn't like the way the chief was running the department.
Yep, that much is true.
All right, so there is something in the contract that allows them to do something.
Or there was something in the contract with the last chief. that allowed
Okay,
him to do something.
touche. But if I was writing the contract and I had just gone through having a guy not doing his job right, I wouldn't make it too easy for him to do it wrong again. Just saying.
Yep. Yeah, but that's subjective, Scott. Because it's under the strong chief law, you know, he has a lot more power, so he can sit there and say that, look, it's his decision. Every time there's an accident in town, an ambulance has to show up. The police is doing their duty, and the ambulance has to show up.
There's
He
got to
could
be
even
something.
say every time there's an accident, an ambulance and a fire truck has to show up. He could say that too. And it's his decision, so the problem is that when you have a strong chief, the decision-making process is subjective. Is it reasonable to send an ambulance for every accident? To be on the if you say to be on the safe side, that's always going to be reasonable. Just to be safe. Just in case, so we can make sure that we can save a life.
Let's put a 12-foot wall near the town offices to keep a tank from rolling down the bank and falling into the pond. I mean,
Okay.
just to be safe.
I got a tank up here on my street.
I know, it's a good
Hey, I
one.
need a water tanker, man. I mean, you know.
Okay, let's call it.
Anyway, let's move on.
Let's set a meeting for Thursday, June 6th.
Okay.
I'll have to set a meeting, and we may need it, may not need it. I'm sort of like a tentative vote on following motion that approved that the Finance Committee says that it is not in favor of this motion. And although it recognizes that you need to tell the town that the money is going to get paid whether we vote for it or not.
Yeah.
And so we have no, the motion is really kind of meaningless.
But if the town voted it, right, and there was enough people to vote it. wouldn't
Doesn't
the
matter.
select board-
It still has to get paid.
Right, I understand that, but wouldn't the select board sit up and take notice that the town is pretty angry about this?
If they don't,
Live in America. Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, let's have all those people that are asking questions ask, what is the select board gonna do about this?
Well, then next year somebody else will run. There will be more competition for the select board again, and an effort to over the next couple of years to change the way people are making decisions. But yeah, you can get outraged. But I mean, look at American politics. I mean, it's still not going to do anything. I mean, what I want is a rationale. If he truly has a rationale and says this is how I operate and this is what to expect, then in the long run, you may have to come up with a budget that's higher than whatever we do. Otherwise, every year, everybody's just going to get upset when this happens.
Here's, I guess, the motion I might want to consider, and it's the following kind of thing. When we get and speak to the motion, and say that although this motion on the surface looks like it's asking for approval to pay this money, whether we vote for or against this makes absolutely no difference whatsoever. The money's going to be spent. So in that case, the Finance Committee probably really doesn't have to make a suggestion, make an approval. But what we will say is this, that the Finance Committee is going to vote against this. And we suggest that you vote yes or no, depending upon whether you think this is a condition which should just go on and happen in the town of Granby, or whether you think the select board ought to be taking a hard look at this situation and find ways to correct it.
So moved.
Sounds good. Yeah. That works, John.
Okay, so I hear a motion, do I hear a second?
I don't like it.
Why?
I don't think it's strong enough.
Oh.
I mean, I really feel that somebody right now has liability for overspending the budget. And I think we ought to try to find out who that person might be. And if it's the Board of Selectmen, and they just choose not to speak to the fire chief to find out whether his budget is anything, so what? And does it mean I think that any one of them should have to come up with a couple of $100,000? No. But I'm looking for some liability on somebody's part.
Responsibility.
Some change.
Yep.
Well, yeah, but you know what, Bob? It doesn't make a difference. So even though I know you don't like it, I'm going to support what John says, because the only way to move the needle on this thing is to either get the select board to take a leadership role and clamp down on this and figure out a strategy, or to stimulate some other people in the town of Granby who are concerned or outraged over the fact that, you know, this kind of behavior goes on, this kind of overspending. I mean, like I said, maybe he'll make a nice logical case, and then everybody will be placated. You know, that's possibility too. But regardless of that, even if there's a justification, the process itself is a problem, because you're budgeting one thing. Last year it was 90,000. This year it's 215,000. Who knows what it's going to be next year?
Doesn't matter. You know, I'll do this. If the fire chief is going to overspend his budget, I'm not going to serve on the finance committee anymore, because my word and thoughts mean absolutely nothing. Because some person that's sitting someplace says, hey, the hell with what Glusman has to say. So I'll do what the last chief did, quit or retire, whatever the case is.
Look, Bob,
What?
what I was going to say is that at times I feel that way too, but that doesn't matter. We're an advisory board. I mean, we have no real other power except the power of the pulpit, so to speak.
We can ask a
So
question.
that's where the power
Who's
is.
responsible?
I mean, I get it. If you need to retire because of health or whatever, but why should the finance committee lose your insight and knowledge just because you're fed up? Because, I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've thought about that myself and said, why am I wasting my time? You know?
I'll tell you what. I'll tell you why. Because I got a town administrator, 3 members of the Board of Selectmen, and a fire chief, all of whom don't give one damn about the town's finances.
Well,
All they
right,
care
but
about
we
is-
pay taxes. But we
Pardon?
pay taxes, and that's why it's important not to give into that kind of feeling. I mean, if you need to retire because you need to retire and but other than that,
Bob
you've
wants
got
to know
the
who's
insight.
responsible.
you-
I want to know who's
Yes.
responsible.
Well, yes, we
That's
all
a simple
do.
question.
But-
Who's
but we're-
responsible
but
for
we're
the 200
fighting-
over?
Yeah, but we have to, it's like raging against the machine. It's
No,
our
it's just
job.
asking a question. Just asking a question. Who is responsible to make sure you come in on budget? Is it the select board? Is it the town administrator? Is it the accountant? Or is it the strong chief? Simple question.
And nobody will give you the answer you're looking for.
Well, we're going to keep asking the question.
That's why the push is our messaging, so that we can get more people in town involved, so that we have more better turnover in the select board or areas, so that we'll get fiscally responsible people in that are willing to expend the energy to push back and make sure that our finances stay in reasonable shape, given our limited resources.
That's the long game. I want the short game. I want the no answer.
You know, the fact of the matter is, the fire chief doesn't, he makes some policies and ends up with some stuff that creates problems. The Board of Selectmen signed the union contract, which creates part of the problem. So I'm not sure that the contract is all that much out of line with what all of municipal labor union contracts are. But the fire chief's real thing is, he doesn't give a damn about a budget. He's shaking his finger at the whole concept of municipal finance. I don't care whether I have money in my budget or not. It's right to do this, and I'm gonna do it.
So here's the
And
next
he
question.
knows that he's out of budget.
Here's a comment. If that's the way it's gonna be, wouldn't that you have to get the money from somewhere. And that would be the townspeople. I think there needs to be a better involvement and communication between the departments and them understanding what they need, what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to stay within the budget because that's how much the town has to give. If they keep overspending, where are they supposed to get the money from? How are they gonna come to the town floor and ask us how they're supposed to get the money? It's our taxes that pay for it. So are they gonna ask us for more taxes out of our money? I mean, we give the school a hard time. I think they should have the same, it should be the same across the board. No, they shouldn't just spend what we don't have to give. I pay taxes. We don't want to pay more taxes.
But the
What
fact
they're
that he-
doing and how their thought process is going to make us have to pay more taxes. I
The
don't want
fact
to
that he
do that.
did 2 years in a row means that, like Bob says, he
Some-
doesn't really care. So
So, well, then
So
there
again-
needs to be some sort of guidance on how they're supposed to do that. There needs to be communication.
Okay, so Jen, you should think about running for select board next year.
Well, Crystal's running next year.
the year after,
The year after, that's when Arcuette is coming back. John, what was your wording for what we say at town meeting?
All right, it's what it is.
The motion before the town,
No, not the motion.
well,
Oh, all right, okay.
the motion before the town purports to require funding. But as a matter of fact, that's illusory. This money is going to get spent whether you vote for this or against it. It makes no difference. The money will be spent. So we suggest that you vote either for or against this, depending upon what your conscience tells you about it is a way to run the town, to let a department overspend by an enormous amount of money, or whether instead the select board ought to take a hard look at this and come up with a solution so that this does not happen again. And if you vote first, yes, vote second, no, and then a clear message will be given to the select board and to the town departments that they can spend freely, or else they've got to adhere to the realities of living and running a small town like we are.
What would you think about typing that up and sending it to the Board of Selectmen right now and say, here's what we're proposing saying at annual town meeting, and see what happens? Because what you're doing is you're getting to town meeting and laying the blame on the selectmen. Or, I won't say the blame, but the solution to the problem, which is in effect, the blame, gets to the selectmen. If you do it now, they've got some time to come up with a solution that might be acceptable to everybody.
I like a heads up. I like that concept.
That's fine with me. Okay, I will do that. It'd be nice to be able to meet with the select board, but, I don't think they have a meeting scheduled before the town meeting. Do they?
You've got one on June 3rd, but it's continuation of the gravel pit hearing, among other things, but
Yeah. Well, if we get a note to them next week, they could elect to ask us to come to the June 3rd meeting.
yeah.
Okay, what else?
That's all I have.
Okay,
So, I'll set our meeting for us for June 6th. And, in the meanwhile, thank everybody for coming this evening, and, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion.
Motion made, is a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? None? Again, the meeting's done. Thank you very much for coming this evening.
Thank
Good night.
you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Night.
Night.
Right.